Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is FrSkyStve. You are watching the Down and Dirty series. We're getting close to the end of this series where we're setting up a plane from start to finish. Keep this brief and as informative as possible. This is a mall. This is the full-size mall. We actually are setting up the E-Flight version of the mall. We're going to jump right into it now. And today we're going to talk about setting up your registering and binding your receiver, and then turning on telemetry. So I think at one point I said I wasn't going to cover this, but it turns out I need to cover it, especially if I want to fix this right here. So what we do is we go into Model, and we go to the RF section. You can see that there's internal module and external module. External module is the thing that goes on, or modules that fit in the back of the transmitter. So multi-protocol module is an example of it. So these are third-party things. It could be ELRS, Crossfire, Ghost. You can even be other FrSky modules, like for example, you can have a more powerful twin light pro module, which will put out a lot more power. So anyways, lots of things you could do with the external module. We focus primarily on the internal module, and that's the things that hook up to FrSky receivers. So we're going to set up a receiver, and the first thing we do is, once we're inside the internal modules, turn the state on, and we have, I'm going to set up the TD mode. So that's a TD, it's a tandem receiver, and we're going to talk about a couple different things here. As far as you can see, there's 2.4 gigahertz is on. You can't turn these on and off. They're both on by default. I get this question from time to time: how many milliwatts should I set the transmitter for? I used to say 25 milliwatts, but now I find that 10 milliwatts on 900 megahertz is probably enough to do most of the flying you're doing if it's going to be line of sight. Unless you're flying really, really low and really far away, then you probably want a bit more power. But other than that, for general flying, 10 milliwatts is perfect. So the thing that we're going to do is we're going to register and bind this. And I can't show you everything because it's on a PC. But let's talk about what it would take for you to get a receiver going. Essentially what happens, every one of these receivers has something it pushes in. It's usually a button. Sometimes you have to feel around for a second or two to figure out what moves on the receiver, but there's usually something, and we used to call that the bind button, but now we call it the register button. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to press register. And then what happens is we power on the receiver while pushing that button in. So you have to hold the button in and power on the receiver at the same time. And what would happen is you would get a name here such as TDR10 and a UID. And all you would do is you'd select register and say OK. Now, what that does is kind of like branding the receiver. There's up at the top here, there's this thing called user ID. You can come in here, you can change this to anything you want, right? And so sometimes people put their names on there. That is the secret passcode that goes between the transmitter and the receiver. And essentially what we're trying to do with this is it's almost like branding the receivers, that the transmitter says you're mine and we're only going to talk to each other. So that's pretty much what that's about. You can buy a receiver, you can go in and you can register it, and then you can get around to binding it later on down the road. Registration is usually the most difficult thing, because you have to push that button in while you power on everything, and sometimes it's hard to do that. But after that, then we do is we go into this thing called RX. Click on that, that's your bind. And all you do is plug in your receiver, give it power, and you'll come up with something. And you select the right one, say bind, everything's okay. Now, there's some other things that happen inside of here as well. There's actually quite a bit, and this keeps changing. So one of the things that happens is you can reset the bind. In case you ever do a firmware update, I usually recommend that you come in here and select this, and it deletes the bind, and then all you have to do is just, once again, select bind and plug in the receiver, and it will work. There's also the thing inside of here, options. I don't know if this one's going to show. Yeah, this is how you set up everything. You can come in here, set channels. So on this one, it only shows the first 24 channels. You can come in here and have S-Bus in. There's a lot to it right here, more than we could ever get into in this episode. But trust me that you could do a lot with these receivers. Each one of these pins, you can actually change the pin order. So you can make this channel 7, this channel 8 if you felt like it. You can move the pins around. Very convenient. It's very nice to work with. I'm going to hit return and get out of here, because we're going to want to set up telemetry. And what telemetry does is it gives us the opportunity to actually, it's the receiver is giving back information to the transmitter about what's going on in the flight. And so now that we're registered, now that we're bound, all we do is go back into models once again, go to the next page. Telemetry is right here. If it's on, you might want to delete all and then start over again, but you turn this on and then all this wonderful telemetry pops up. Depending on the receiver, some don't have as much. This tends to show every piece of telemetry, and you get things like altitude, vertical speed, all sorts of things like that. I like altitude. We're going to come back to that one. So maybe what we do, instead of having valid frame rates right here, is we come in here, and I was trying to figure out what to do. I want to configure this widget, and before I could not see telemetry. So if I click on this widget, it's a timer logo, GPS map, value timer logs, text, value. All right, it's probably under value. Analogs, channels, gyro, trainer, timers, telemetry. There you are, all the way at the bottom there. And remember, I saw altitude, and I kind of like that. Could put it right there. As long as you can select it, we can work with it. So now you have to get all the way out of there. And now as you're flying around, if you had something that had a variometer in it, you could see at the altitude in real time how high up you're flying. And a lot of receivers have those, things like the TDSR10s have those, for example. And with that, we're done for the episode. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. Just leave them in the comments. And otherwise, we'll catch you on the next episode.